Let me tell you something real, something nobody wants to say out loud, but every woman has felt in her spirit at least once. Cheating doesn't always start in the bedroom, it starts in the mouth. Before a man ever betrays you physically, he betrays you verbally. His words shift, his tone changes, his explanations get thinner, and one day he looks you straight in the eye and says 6 dangerous words that are not innocent, not casual, and definitely not accidental. Those 6 words are, "You're just overthinking it, relax." Now listen to me closely. A faithful man never needs to dismiss your intuition. A loyal man never feels threatened by your questions. And a man with nothing to hide does not tell a woman to silence her feelings. When a man says, "You're just overthinking it," what he's really saying is, "You're getting too close to the truth." Because intuition is not insecurity. Intuition is information. A woman doesn't wake up one day and randomly feel disconnected. She feels it because the energy changed, the attention shifted, the consistency disappeared, the affection feels forced, the phone is suddenly private, the schedule is suddenly busy, and when you finally speak up, instead of reassurance, he gives you dismissal. That's not love, that's deflection. See, when a man is cheating, he becomes emotionally lazy at home. He no longer wants to explain himself because explanations require honesty, and honesty would expose him. So instead of clarity, he gives you confusion. Instead of comfort, he gives you criticism. He turns the spotlight on you so nobody looks too closely at him. And let me tell you something powerful. A man who truly values you will never make you feel crazy for asking for clarity. When he says relax, what he really means is stop paying attention. When he says you're overthinking, what he really means is don't connect the dots. Because once you connect the dots, the story falls apart. A cheating man needs you doubting yourself more than he needs to prove his innocence. He survives on your confusion. He benefits from your silence. And he hopes you're insecure enough to ignore what your spirit already knows. But here's where the power shifts. The moment you stop explaining why you feel the way you feel, the moment you stop begging him to understand, the moment you stop trying to convince him to choose you, that's the moment the truth gets loud. Because a man who is innocent will lean in. A man who is guilty will pull away. A man who is faithful will say, "Talk to me. I want to understand." A man who is cheating will say, "You're doing too much." And here's the hard truth. Nobody prepares women for, not every man cheats because he doesn't love you. Some men cheat because they lack discipline, integrity, and emotional maturity. But no matter the reason, disrespect is still disrespect. Love does not require you to shrink your voice. Commitment does not require you to doubt your worth, and loyalty does not come with emotional manipulation. If a man truly wants to keep you, he protects your peace. If he wants to cheat in peace, he attacks your perception. So don't argue with a man who dismisses your feelings. Don't debate your intuition. Don't prove what you already know. Observe, because actions will always confess what words try to hide. And remember this, a woman who trusts herself is dangerous to a man who lies. You don't need proof to start choosing yourself. You don't need closure to walk away with dignity. You don't need his confession to reclaim your power. Sometimes the sentence "you're overthinking it" is all the confirmation you need. Because the right man won't fear your awareness, and the wrong man will always try to silence it. Words expose hidden betrayal early because language is the first place where truth slips, long before actions are fully visible. A man may believe he can control his behavior, manage his time, and cover his tracks, but he cannot completely control the subtle shifts in how he speaks when his loyalty changes. Words carry intention, and intention reveals direction. When a man is committed, his language is grounded, patient, and reassuring. When he begins to betray, even secretly, his words start to fracture. They become defensive, dismissive, or vague, not because he wants them to, but because deception creates internal tension that leaks through speech. Cheating creates pressure. It forces a man to live in 2 realities at once, and language becomes the battlefield where those realities collide. In one moment he is trying to appear loving and present, and in the next he is protecting a secret. That split creates inconsistencies. He may speak less, offer shorter replies, or rely on generic phrases that require no emotional investment. He may start using statements that shut conversations down instead of opening them up. This is not accidental. When someone has something to hide, clarity becomes dangerous, and words are adjusted to avoid deeper discussion. The earliest sign of betrayal is not distance, lateness, or secrecy with a phone. Those come later. The first sign is dismissal. It shows up when genuine questions are met with irritation, when concern is labeled as drama, and when intuition is framed as insecurity. These responses are not about the question being asked. They are about the discomfort of being seen too clearly. A faithful man has no reason to rush past your feelings. A man who is hiding something does. He needs the conversation to end before it goes where he cannot control it. Language also shifts in responsibility. A man who is loyal takes ownership of how his actions affect you. His words sound like accountability. A man who is betraying shifts blame. His sentences quietly move the problem onto you. Suddenly you are too sensitive, reading into things, or never satisfied. This shift is strategic, even if unconscious. By making you doubt yourself, he buys time. Confusion becomes a shield. The more you question your own perception, the less you question his behavior. There is also a noticeable change in emotional availability through speech. When loyalty is present, words carry warmth, curiosity, and engagement. When betrayal begins, words lose depth. Conversations feel transactional. He answers, but he does not connect. He listens, but he does not respond with care. This emotional thinning is a warning sign. It is the sound of attention being redirected elsewhere. A man emotionally invested in another place cannot fully show up in his language at home. Another important detail is how quickly reassurance disappears. A man with nothing to hide understands that reassurance is not weakness, it is care. He explains because he wants peace, not because he owes it. When betrayal enters, reassurance feels like a risk. The more he explains, the more likely he is to slip. So instead of calming your concerns, he minimizes them. Instead of clarity, he offers final statements designed to end the discussion. These are not words meant to heal. They are words meant to control the outcome of the conversation. Words expose betrayal early because they reveal respect or the loss of it. Even before a man crosses a physical line, his language often crosses an emotional one. He may speak to you with less patience, less gentleness, and less regard for how his words land. This erosion of verbal respect is not random. When guilt enters, empathy weakens. It becomes harder for him to honor you emotionally while dishonoring you privately. What makes words so powerful is that they respond to pressure in real time. Actions can be planned. Stories can be rehearsed, but conversation is live. It requires immediate emotional alignment. When that alignment is broken, speech exposes it. That is why a woman often feels something is wrong before she can prove it. Her body is reacting to what her ears are hearing, even if her mind has not yet named it. This is why paying attention to words is not paranoia, it is awareness. Patterns matter more than promises. Tone matters more than excuses. Repeated dismissal matters more than one-time mistakes. When words consistently make you feel small, confused, or wrong for asking honest questions, something deeper is already broken. Betrayal rarely announces itself with a confession. It whispers through changed language, shortened patience, and closed conversations. And the earlier you listen, the less damage you have to heal later. Words do not just communicate love, they reveal loyalty. Long before the truth comes out, it speaks quietly, sentence by sentence, waiting to be heard. Dismissal signals guilt, not innocence, because a person who has nothing to hide does not fear being questioned. Innocence is calm. It is open. It welcomes conversation because truth does not need protection. Guilt, on the other hand, is reactive. It is impatient with curiosity and threatened by attention. When a man dismisses your concerns, instead of addressing them, he is not proving confidence, he is revealing discomfort. Dismissal is not strength. It is avoidance wearing the mask of authority. A loyal man understands that questions are not attacks. He knows that concern comes from investment, not insecurity. When you ask for clarity, he leans in because he values connection more than control. A guilty man does the opposite. He shuts the door quickly. He labels your questions as unnecessary, dramatic, or exhausting. This is not because the questions lack merit, but because they point toward something he does not want to examine. Dismissal becomes a way to escape accountability without admitting wrongdoing. Guilt creates urgency. A man who is hiding something feels pressure to end conversations before they go too far. That pressure shows up as irritation, sarcasm, or emotional withdrawal. Instead of responding with reassurance, he responds with shutdown. He may say things that minimize your feelings or rush you into silence. These reactions are not random emotional habits. They are defense mechanisms. The goal is not resolution, but relief from exposure. Innocence invites dialogue. Guilt avoids it. This difference is subtle but consistent. When someone is innocent, they repeat themselves if necessary. They clarify misunderstandings. They ask what you need to feel secure. They understand that peace in the relationship matters. A guilty person wants the conversation to end, not because it is unimportant, but because it is dangerous. The longer the discussion lasts, the higher the chance of contradiction, slip-ups, or emotional cracks. Dismissal also flips the power dynamic. Instead of addressing the issue, the guilty party reframes the problem as your reaction. Your emotions become the focus instead of his behavior. You are told you are overreacting, imagining things, or creating problems where none exist. This tactic does two things at once. It protects his secret and destabilizes your confidence. The more you doubt yourself, the safer he feels. This is why dismissal is not neutral. It is strategic, even when unconscious. There is also a loss of empathy that accompanies guilt. Carrying a secret requires emotional energy, and that energy is often taken from the relationship. As guilt grows, patience shrinks. Compassion becomes selective. He may still be kind in public or during calm moments, but when confronted, his tone hardens. The warmth disappears. This emotional coldness is not about you asking the wrong question. It is about him being unable to show care while concealing truth. Dismissal signals guilt because it shows fear of transparency. Innocence does not need to control perception. It allows itself to be seen fully. Guilt, however, depends on confusion. It needs you uncertain, second-guessing, and quiet. That is why dismissive statements often come with finality. They are designed to close the subject, not explore it. They leave no room for follow-up because follow-up threatens the story being maintained. Another key sign is repetition. Everyone can be dismissive once out of stress or fatigue. But when dismissal becomes a pattern, it is no longer about mood. It is about motive. Repeated shutdowns signal an ongoing desire to avoid truth. Over time, this pattern erodes trust more deeply than a single lie ever could. Trust dies not just from betrayal, but from being told your feelings do not matter. What makes dismissal so damaging is that it teaches silence. After enough shutdowns, you stop asking. You start editing yourself. You begin carrying questions alone. This is the quiet victory guilt relies on, not because the truth disappeared, but because it no longer has a voice. A man who dismisses your concerns repeatedly is not preserving peace, he is avoiding responsibility. Innocence seeks understanding, even when conversations are uncomfortable. Guilt seeks control, even if it costs intimacy. That difference matters. Love grows through honesty, not authority. Respect shows up as patience, not power plays. When dismissal replaces reassurance, something deeper is already compromised. Ultimately, dismissal is a signal. It is the emotional alarm that something is being protected at the expense of connection. You do not need proof to notice the pattern. You only need to pay attention to how conversations end. If your concerns are consistently shut down instead of held with care, that is not innocence speaking. That is guilt trying to stay hidden. Intuition is information, not insecurity, because it is not born from fear but from awareness. It is the quiet intelligence that forms when your mind, body, and emotional memory process patterns faster than conscious thought. In relationships, intuition often speaks before logic can organize evidence. It shows up as a feeling that something is off, a subtle discomfort that does not disappear with reassurance alone. This feeling is frequently dismissed as overthinking, but in reality, it is your internal system alerting you to a mismatch between words and energy. Insecurity asks for validation because it doubts self-worth. Intuition asks for clarity because it senses inconsistency. The two are often confused, especially by those who benefit from that confusion. When a woman voices her intuition, she is not saying, "I am afraid." She is saying, "I am paying attention." Her awareness comes from repeated observations, tone changes, emotional shifts, and breaks in consistency. These signals may seem small individually, but together they form a message that deserves respect, not ridicule. Intuition gathers information from what is said and what is avoided. It listens to pauses, defensiveness, and the sudden absence of openness. When someone's behavior changes without explanation, intuition notices. When affection feels conditional or attention becomes selective, intuition responds. This response is not dramatic, it is biological. The nervous system is designed to detect safety and threat. Emotional uncertainty triggers the same internal alerts as physical risk. Ignoring intuition is not strength, it is self-betrayal. Many people are taught to distrust their intuition, especially in relationships. They are told they are too sensitive, too emotional, or imagining things. Over time, this conditioning trains them to override their internal signals in favor of external approval. This is dangerous because intuition weakens when repeatedly ignored. The more you silence it, the harder it becomes to recognize it clearly. Yet even then, it does not disappear. It waits, growing louder through anxiety, restlessness, or emotional fatigue. Intuition becomes most active when there is misalignment. When words say one thing but actions say another, intuition steps in to bridge the gap. It is the part of you that refuses to accept confusion as normal. This is why intuition often surfaces during moments of emotional distance or inconsistency. It is not reacting to imagined threats. It is responding to real discrepancies that have not yet been acknowledged. Insecurity shrinks in the presence of reassurance and consistency. Intuition sharpens in the presence of contradiction. This is a crucial difference. When a relationship is healthy, intuition feels calm and grounded. There is no constant need to scan for danger because safety is evident. When something is wrong, intuition becomes alert, not because you are weak, but because your system is trying to protect you from harm. Another important truth is that intuition does not demand immediate conclusions. It simply asks you to pause and observe. It encourages curiosity rather than accusation. When honored, intuition leads to better questions, clearer boundaries, and stronger self-trust. When dismissed, it turns inward and manifests as self-doubt. This is why gaslighting is so damaging. It teaches you to mistrust your own perception, leaving you dependent on someone else's version of reality. Intuition is built from lived experience. Every interaction you have ever had contributes to its wisdom. It recognizes familiar patterns even when your conscious mind wants to give the benefit of the doubt. This does not make you cynical, it makes you informed. Experience is not baggage when it teaches discernment. It becomes baggage only when you are forced to ignore what it has taught you. Trusting intuition does not mean acting impulsively or assuming the worst. It means taking your inner signals seriously enough to seek truth. It means allowing yourself to notice discomfort without immediately explaining it away. Intuition does not demand chaos. It invites alignment. It wants your inner world and outer reality to match. When someone reacts defensively to your intuition, that react ion is information too. A partner who values you will be curious about what you feel, not threatened by it. They will ask questions, not issue dismissals. They understand that intuition is part of emotional intelligence, not an obstacle to love. Ultimately, intuition is your relationship with yourself. It is the trust you build by listening instead of silencing. When you honor it, you reclaim authority over your experience. You stop outsourcing your reality to someone else's comfort. In a world that often tells you to doubt yourself, intuition is the quiet reminder that you are allowed to know what you feel. Intuition is not insecurity, it is awareness asking to be acknowledged. And when you learn to listen to it, you protect not only your heart, but your sense of self. Silence reveals truth faster than arguments, because truth does not need force, and lies do not survive absence. When you stop arguing, explaining, and defending yourself, you remove the noise that allows deception to hide. Arguments give dishonest people something to push against. Silence takes that away. It creates space, and in that space, reality shows itself without resistance. Arguments are exhausting because they keep you focused on words instead of patterns. When you argue, you are still engaging in someone else's version of events. You are responding, reacting, and trying to be understood. In doing so, you keep the connection active even when the respect is broken. Silence changes the dynamic. It shifts the responsibility back where it belongs. Without your emotional energy feeding the conversation, behavior becomes the loudest voice in the room. Silence is not weakness. It is restraint. It is the decision to observe rather than convince. When you stop arguing, you stop giving explanations to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. This is when the truth accelerates. A person who is genuine will feel the absence and move toward clarity. They will reach out with accountability, concern, and effort. A person who is hiding something will feel exposed and either withdraw further or reveal themselves through inconsistent behavior. When you argue, you give a liar time to adjust. They can refine their story, sharpen their defenses, and turn the focus onto your tone instead of their actions. Silence removes that advantage. It disrupts their control over the narrative. Without constant interaction, they cannot test what you know or manipulate what you feel. Their next move becomes unfiltered, and that move tells you everything. Silence also reveals priorities. When you stop initiating, chasing, or demanding explanations, you see how much effort someone is willing to make without pressure. You see whether they value resolution or simply enjoy having the upper hand. Arguments blur this distinction because they keep both people emotionally engaged. Silence clarifies it. Effort or absence becomes the answer. There is power in stepping back because it exposes intention. A person who cares about you will notice the distance and address it with sincerity. They will ask what went wrong and take responsibility for their part. A person who benefited from chaos will feel relieved by the quiet. That relief is information. It tells you the conflict was never about misunderstanding, it was about control. Silence also protects your dignity. Arguments often push you into saying things you later regret, revealing vulnerabilities to someone who may use them against you. Silence preserves your emotional boundaries. It allows you to process privately instead of performing pain publicly. This self-control is not passive. It is deliberate self-respect. Truth surfaces quickly when you stop filling the gaps. People reveal who they are when they're not being managed, reminded, or corrected. Silence removes your influence and lets behavior stand on its own. If someone truly values you, they will not be comfortable with unresolved distance. If they do not, their indifference will become obvious without a single word spoken. Silence also changes you. It forces you to sit with your feelings instead of discharging them through argument. In that stillness, clarity grows. You begin to see what you were fighting to preserve and whether it was worth the cost. Many people confuse arguing with fighting for the relationship, but often it is silence that shows whether the relationship is fighting for you. This does not mean silence should be used as punishment or manipulation. Healthy silence is not about withholding communication to gain power. It is about stepping out of unproductive cycles to see the truth clearly. It is about choosing observation over obsession. When silence comes from self-respect, it brings insight, not guilt. Arguments can go on forever without resolution. Silence ends confusion quickly. It removes the illusion of progress and replaces it with evidence. Words can be twisted. Promises can be made and broken. Behavior in silence has nowhere to hide. When you stop arguing, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop asking someone to see your value and start watching whether they already do. This shift is uncomfortable, but it is honest. It reveals who is capable of meeting you with integrity and who depended on your emotional labor to stay connected. Self-trust restores power and clarity because it reconnects you to your own authority. When you trust yourself, you stop looking outside for permission to feel, think, or decide. You no longer wait for someone else's behavior to make sense of your reality. Instead, you listen inward and act from alignment. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Confusion fades not because answers magically appear, but because you stop arguing with what you already know. Loss of clarity often begins with loss of self-trust. It happens slowly through repeated moments of being dismissed, doubted, or told your feelings are wrong. Over time, you begin to question your perception. You replay conversations, search for alternative explanations, and minimize your discomfort. This mental loop drains power. It keeps you stuck in analysis instead of action. The moment you begin trusting yourself again, that loop breaks. Self-trust does not mean certainty about everything. It means confidence in your ability to respond wisely, even when outcomes are unclear. You no longer need absolute proof to honor your boundaries. You understand that discomfort is enough information to pause, reflect, and choose differently. This understanding returns power to your hands. You are no longer waiting to be convinced that something is wrong. You accept your experience as valid. When self-trust is restored, clarity follows because decisions become simpler. You stop overcomplicating ions that consistently make you feel anxious, small, or unseen. Instead of asking, "What if I'm wrong?" you begin asking, "Why am I tolerating this?" This reframing shifts focus from self-blame to self-respect. It clears mental fog and reveals what truly matters. Self-trust also dissolves the need for constant reassurance. When you trust yourself, you no longer depend on someone else's words to stabilize your emotions. You can hear promises without clinging to them. You can observe behavior without making excuses. This independence is not emotional distance, it is emotional maturity. It allows you to engage without losing yourself. Power returns when you stop negotiating your worth. Self-trust draws a line that does not require explanation. You begin to move differently. You speak with less urgency. You react with more restraint. You walk away sooner from situations that drain you. These changes are not about becoming cold or detached. They are about becoming grounded. Clarity also deepens because self-trust sharpens perception. You start noticing patterns instead of isolated incidents. You listen to tone, not just words. You pay attention to how interactions make you feel over time. This awareness prevents you from being easily confused or misled. When someone's actions do not align with their words, you notice without panic. You trust your interpretation and adjust accordingly. Self-trust transforms silence from fear into peace. You no longer feel the need to fill every gap with explanation or justification. You become comfortable observing without interference. This calm observation gives truth room to surface. You stop chasing understanding from people who are unwilling to offer it. Instead, you understand yourself. One of the most powerful effects of self-trust is emotional freedom. You are no longer controlled by the fear of being misunderstood or abandoned. You know that you can survive disappointment because you have your own back. This security changes how you show up in relationships. You choose rather than chase. You invite rather than beg. This is real power. Self-trust also strengthens boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are decisions guided by clarity. When you trust yourself, you enforce boundaries without guilt. You do not over-explain or justify, you simply act in alignment with your values. This consistency reinforces clarity because your actions match your inner truth. Ultimately, self-trust restores clarity by ending inner conflict. You stop fighting your instincts and start honoring them. The noise quiets. Decisions feel cleaner. You no longer need to convince yourself to stay where you are unhappy or to leave where you feel diminished. Power does not come from controlling others or predicting outcomes. It comes from trusting yourself enough to respond with integrity. When self-trust is restored, confusion loses its grip. You see clearly, move decisively, and protect your peace without apology. That is clarity. That is power. In the end, everything comes back to one truth. You already know more than you think. The words you hear, the dismissal you feel, the silence that follows, and the quiet voice inside you are all pieces of the same message. Nothing was random. Nothing was imagined. Every shift you noticed was information, not insecurity, and every moment of confusion was an invitation to return to yourself. You do not need louder arguments to find the truth. You need stillness. You do not need more explanations from someone else. You need honesty with yourself. When you stop fighting for clarity and start trusting your perception, the fog lifts, silence exposes what words try to hide, and self-trust restores the power that doubt slowly took away. Love is not supposed to make you feel small, anxious, or unsure of your worth. Loyalty does not require you to question your sanity, and a relationship that is right will never punish you for being aware. When you choose to trust yourself, you stop chasing reassurance and start choosing peace. That choice changes everything. Walk away from confusion without guilt. Walk toward clarity without fear. The moment you honor what you feel, you reclaim your power. And nothing is more attractive, more healing, or more freeing than a person who finally believes themselves.